Welcome. We hereby call the August 19th, 2019 meeting of the Alexander County Board of Commissioners to order. At this time, we will have our invocation by Commissioner Larry Yoder and our Pledge of Allegiance by Commissioner Marty Pennell.
Let's pray. Our kind and most precious Lord, we come before you this evening to ask your blessings upon those who are gathered here tonight. Lord, we'd ask that you bless our military personnel, both home and abroad. Be with our law enforcement, our emergency personnel. We'd ask that you look after the leaders and look after the people of this county. Be with those leaders of the state, the nation, and the world, that we can bring peace throughout and remember the one that brought us here and give grace to him. For all thy name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Attention, salute, pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, this time we'll entertain any commissioner report. I had the pleasure of going to ribbon cutting at the Bodies of Steel last week. A really nice gym in Bethlehem. I know that's going to be a great addition to the folks there to have a good place to work out with people who are enthused about being fit and eating right and all the things that I should be doing too. Also noticed as I was driving down the road, the lot on 16 South for J&J Towing, they're underway on their construction there. We have sewer projects and water projects and Bethlehem revitalization project and the road project up there. And EDC had a job fair, very successful here recently. We had a record number of inspections in July, which is a great tick of economic growth. We're entertaining a program with the Governor's Hometown Strong. We have slowly but surely the broadband project is coming along. A lot of interest in downtown revitalization and just a lot of things happening. So I think it's a great time to certainly be in Alexander County. We may have challenges, but we've got a lot of great things and a lot of wonderful people doing things along the way. And here, just in a little bit, we'll have the pleasure of having a kind of a joint discussion with the town council from Taylorsville. So that's an interesting and exciting endeavor as well. So we're excited to be seeing some good things happening.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to add also that on the 15th of August, I attended the Midnight Vision Forum, and a lot of good ideas came out of there, a large crowd, and they look forward to bringing that group together to enhance and make Midnight a better community.
Yep. Was the wise saying goes, without vision, the people perish. So building that vision and then having people enlist in it is the trick to making things happen. So any other reports? At this time, I'll entertain a motion to adopt our agenda.
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion regarding the agenda? No discussion. We'll have a vote on the agenda. And vote unanimously passes. And we'll now entertain public comment. No public comment, so we'll move on to public hearing. Proposed for the historic preservation, and I have a notice here. It says the public will hereby take notice that the Alexander County Board of Commissioners will conduct a public hearing on August the 19th, 2019 at 6 o'clock in room 103 of the CVCC, Alexander Center, Taylorsville, North Carolina. The purpose of the hearing is to consider public comment on proposed historic preservation design review guidelines developed in an effort to preserve properties representing elements of Alexander County's history. The proposed historic preservation design review guidelines are available for public inspection in offices of the Clerk of the Board, County Administration Office, 621 Loudown Road, as well as the Economic Development Corporation on Highway 16 North between the hours of 8 and 5, Monday through Friday. Or for more information, call 632-9332 or 352-7757. At this time, we'll have Mr. Lee Sharp, the Vice President, or the Vice Chairman of the Historic Preservation Committee, come forward. And need a motion, if we could, to go into public hearing.
So move.
Second.
Public hearing is now in session. Mr. Sharp, would love to hear what you have.
vote on it.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Any discussion? Vote. All in favor? Vote passes.
Here we go.
Now we're ready for you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Bill and Commissioners. On behalf of the Historic Preservation Committee, we appreciate the opportunity for you to have a public hearing and consider the proposed Historic Preservation Design Review Guidelines. These guidelines are a very important part of the operational foundation needed for the committee to safeguard the heritage of the county by preserving certain qualified properties and historic districts. The Alexander County Comprehensive Plan of 2008 recognizes historic and cultural resources as an untapped opportunity. State and federal legislation offers a partnership with local governments through the Certified Local Government Program, and through this program, we can receive technical assistance and training from the State Historic Preservation Office, participate in the National Register nomination process, and are eligible to submit applications to receive matching grants for preservation activities. So these design guidelines are an important criteria for becoming a CLG. Earlier, using Part 3C of Article 19 of Chapter 160A of the North Carolina General Statutes, you commissioners adopted the Alexander County Historic Preservation Ordinance that was in April of this year. The Historic Preservation Committee was formed in May, and the mission of this committee is to identify, preserve, and to protect Alexander County's historic resources and to educate the public about these resources. With your support, the Historic Preservation Committee is now able to begin being operational and to tap into various opportunities. This joint effort will safeguard the heritage of the county by preserving properties that represent important elements of the county's cultural, social, economic, political, and architectural history. These guidelines are based on the United States Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation. The 10 national standards were first developed in 1976 by the National Park Service and present key principles for preserving, which includes maintaining, repairing, replacing, and other treatments to historic properties. Design review guidelines are key support materials for administering design review of historic resources and may be used by committees, commissions, boards, and applicants in the review process. In essence, the design guidelines provide for a consistency in review, a basis for making fair decisions, incentives for investment, and a tool for educating the public on the value of preserving our heritage. So working with the State Historical Preservation Office, we have identified a number of historic properties in Alexander County. By formulating a structured process for design review, we will be better positioned to assist citizens in conserving, preserving, and in maintaining our historic resources. The benefits to the citizens of Alexander County are the conservation, protection, and preservation of natural and historic resources, as well as the eligibility for preservation grants on certain qualifying projects, and the economic contribution of building a quality life in the county for a very competitive community. As we map out future historic districts and landmarks, we believe that it will be more productive to have these design review process in place to better educate the public about the advantages of preservation. The proposed review design guidelines will assist us in achieving that goal. Alexander County has one property listed on the National Register of Historic Places. The Lucas Mansion in Hidnight was designated in 1981. 16 additional potential properties were placed on a study list in 1987. Nothing much has happened on that at this point, other than some of those facilities and buildings are no longer there. You find the house with a chimney left where it was. So a lot has happened in the last 30 years. But the state study list is a foundation, a starting point from which to work, and is the first step in the National Historic Designation process. The study list screens out properties that may not qualify. They may be old, but clearly not eligible. So this process eliminates and only focuses on those that have a great or opportunity of being included on the National Register. We're investigating those resources at this time. One study list property is the Taylorsville Milling Company, also known as the A&M Feed Service. That's over at 51 2nd Avenue North in Taylorsville. That property has been recommended to the National Register nomination to the National Park Service, and very shortly, I think we'll be approved for that. We've been waiting almost any day to hear that approval or official designation coming through. When that happens, that will just be the second property in almost 40 years that have been designated in this county. There are several properties on the study list that does warrant consideration. County Jail, the J.M. Miller Hardware property in Stony Point, Lenny's Mill in northeastern Alexander County, and the proposed design review guidelines will give us a tool which we may educate the owners of the property of potential historic resources while providing them with information about the benefits of preservation. Earlier this month, we made a presentation to the Alexander County Planning and Zoning Commission, and they endorsed the review guidelines that we're holding the public hearing on tonight. So now, on behalf of the Historic Preservation Committee, I respectfully request your approval of the Alexander County Historic Preservation Design Review Guidelines. We will be happy to entertain questions if you have any.
Mr. Sharp, I got, what, the process, I guess, I'm maybe a foolish question, but there's a building identified and someone owns it. What's the homeowner's role, or the property owner, I guess's role, in either making that a designation or not making that a designation?
In most situations, the property owner can decide to participate or not participate. If he doesn't want to participate or she doesn't want to, then basically, initially, it's their choice. Now, there can be certain circumstances where a district is involved and the majority of the other or components of that community are included, or if it's already been designated, a property owner buying into a property would have to go by the guidelines that were established.
But generally speaking, if someone owned a property and they had no interest in that, and it,
And it goes away. You
Just goes
have
away.
to find somebody else that is interested. Is that further clarification? Connie is our expert on this, but that's the general situation.
you would certainly like to hope that people would want to preserve historic properties, but at the same time, would
Not everybody would.
infringement on personal property would not be a good thing.
True.
Mr. Sharp, you said in most cases, the owner would have the ability to choose to or not. What would be the case of not in most cases? Could a property be designated into the Historical Society without an owner giving permission?
I don't know, Connie, I'll call on you for
If
more
the-
expert
If you're
advice.
establishing a
Yes, come up here if you would, please.
I'm just looking for clarification because he'd said most cases.
If you're establishing a district, that means there's a group of property owners. And we would conduct workshops that would inform all of them what the process is, what their benefits are, what their disadvantages are. There aren't many of those. But we would still have public meetings about a designation of a district. And rule of thumb is at least 85% of the property owners in the proposed district must be in favor of the district. Those other 15%, if they're on the edges, they can be cut out. But if they sit right in the middle of it, then they have to go along with it.
And I would say, I couldn't foresee a place in Alexander County where we would have a historical district at this time. So I don't think that's anything that we need to worry the public about. Do you foresee that? Have you, Mr. Sharp, have you identified a bunch of properties on one street or one area that could go into a district?
For example, the meal we're talking about, there would be the potential for the hotel to be included in a district in that area there. That would be buildings from that standpoint.
But as far as
But in
someone's
that
house,
situation, in establishing of it, they would have to agree to proceed with the process to begin with.
right?
Yes. But as far as a residential historic district, we haven't identified one at this point.
And I don't think that's anything that's in the foreseeable future that I could see being an issue.
I think our first focus is going to be on a commercial district, if there's a possibility for a commercial district.
Elaborate there.
The commercial properties, there are a lot of incentives that go along with being on the National Register, such as the tax credits that come both from the federal government as well as the state government. And it's a credit, it's not a deduction, so it comes right off the bottom line. But it's for qualifying components of a rehabilitation project. So currently, for building improvements, we have no incentives to offer folks that are looking to acquire the properties that are available as far as renovating them. But if that property were to go on the National Register, then we'd be able to work with them to get tax credits for the upgrading and rehabilitation of those properties.
So then, for example, if we're looking at the mill and the hotel, then there could be a commercial district where there are 3 or 4 buildings that fall into it with or without
Yes, sir.
owners'
In
support?
blocks, because there are 2 different types of buildings in districts. There are contributing buildings and non-contributing buildings. So the contributing ones qualify on all levels of historic preservation, or for the criteria of being designated. Non-contributing, not so much. So they would just be included in the district, but again, it's that 85% that you look for as far as the number of contributing buildings to non-contributing. for instance, I see a puzzle on your face. So, for instance, the hotel would probably qualify. Excuse me, Mr. Sharp. Taylorsville Times building probably would be a non-contributing building if we got the whole downtown Taylorsville as a district, as a commercial district.
But would the Taylorsville Times building then be obligated to the restoration regulations and stuff that the rest of the district was held to?
To some degree, but not as strict as a contributing building would be. But again, like Mr. Mayberry said, I don't believe we're gonna be establishing districts right at first. I think we have a lot of landmark buildings that need to be addressed first, like the Alexander County Jail. That's a beautiful building that is already on the study list and would qualify.
I wasn't even going, I would have never thought of a district had you not mentioned it there, so.
But these guidelines would cover both landmark buildings as well as identified districts.
So in theory, then someone within that district could be forced to do something that they didn't want to do.
Yes, if all of their neighbors wanted to do it and they didn't. I mean, most districts don't have like a donut hole in them to, if someone doesn't want to participate.
Anyone from the audience have any questions? We are in an open hearing.
I did not see anything about districts in the guidelines here. Where's that at?
It doesn't really specify whether a building's in a district or not. It just has to be on the National Register.
Then how do you declare a district?
You identify it and submit all the buildings in that particular area to the National Register. So it would be a nomination process that would go first. First, it would have to be on the study list for the state. And then the state would approve it. They recommend it to the National Park Service. And they take, I believe, it's 120, 140 days to get back to you whether or not you've qualified. North Carolina is one of the few states that it has a very stringent process that you go through on the state level. So by the time the state recommends it, you pretty much know you're gonna be listed on the National Register because they'll send it back to you if they don't think that it will be.
And I'll just be real honest, I am all for and extremely supportive of all the hard work and what we're doing here with landmark buildings and the National Registry and incentives that people can get. But I am a little apprehensive about a district concept or a spot where people could possibly be forced to do something with their property that they didn't want to do. I don't mean to cause a hiccup, but I'm all for everything else you said up to that point. That causes me a little bit of concern. Maybe I'm worrying about something I shouldn't be, but.
Bud had some comments at the Planning and Zoning Commission. He's a member of that and has lived in a district. Bud, could you share some insight into that, please?
Typically, when a district is formed, I was on the City of Hickory Historic Properties Commission. When districts are formed, there's an agreement among those people that are in that district, even prior to that district being formed, that they have to abide by the guidelines that have been established by the committee. And normally what happens is most of those landowners, those property owners, abide by that, because you don't want to be a sore thumb in the middle of a district that is renovating itself. So it's not likely you're going to have people that are going to be completely and totally against a district or against having to do the things that they need to do. The other thing is that the guidelines are established so that you do have a direction to go in. They can be changed at any time to accommodate something that possibly can't be done in a specific district. So if say, the house was painted a color of yellow at one time originally, well, that yellow is no longer the same yellow, it's faded. So what do? Do you paint it the original yellow, or do you paint it the faded yellow? So there's a lot of things that can change in order to make that entire district work for everyone.
And I know a guy that restored an old house and did quite a bit of sandblasting in it, you know, and that's a spot in there that says, you know, that's something that you don't do. So I don't know, just,
Well, they're flexible. They're flexible.
I would not go for sandblasting though. It's like taking a crust of bread, if you sandblast brick, and say each brick is a crust of bread, you sandblast it, you're taking the crust off, and all you have is the soft, mushy middle. So it really jeopardizes the integrity of your building if you sandblast.
And one of the things that the committee certainly has to do, and that's have some common sense in the implementation of the appropriateness of various aspects that would be coming before it. So there is a great deal of latitude there in terms of accommodating a situation and finding working ways to get through various issues that may come up.
who then monitors that as the process unfolds? If I want to be identified, or if I get identified and I'm a property owner and I'm going to do something, who monitors what they're doing to say that it is or isn't permissible?
The Historic Preservation Committee.
The committee does?
Appointed. And there's also an appeal process.
What's, I mean, they go out and look at what owners of buildings are doing and say this is good and this is not good?
There's a process called the Certificate of Appropriateness that property owners would give to the Historic Preservation Committee and outline what they'd like to do to their property. And there are various stages, little things don't need, like just basic maintenance doesn't need a certificate of appropriateness. Some of them, like paint colors, that can be done by staff, but anything that's structurally done to a historic property would need to go before the Historic Preservation Committee. Now, if they make a ruling that the property owner doesn't like, it can then be appealed to this board.
And I do have a little bit of concern about the district part, but I think anyone that has a property, they have to voluntarily submit it to be on the historic, or National Register of Historic Places first. None of anything that we're talking about applies until that person voluntarily applies to be on that. Now, if there's some sort of commercial district, then 85% of those property owners have to voluntarily want and apply for that. Now, the other 15%, you know, I'm a little concerned about that. I'm a little concerned about somebody being thrust into a district that they don't want to be in. This is kind of like zoning laws, though, or it is zoning laws. People don't always, you know, get to choose whether they're in a residential or commercial or industrial zoning. But I do have a little bit of
But they choose that when they purchase the property. You know, it's zoned what it is when they purchase it, and you know what you're buying.
Right.
So if I buy a building and it's not listed on the historical registry, and I don't want it listed on the historical registry, and then it becomes listed on the historical registry, then I have to deal with things that I never wanted in the first place as a property owner. And while that may be few to none, that's still quite an infringement on that person's rights and purchase, I think.
It is a possibility that that could happen. I don't think it would, but it is a possibility. So how do we address that?
You know, the way that I understand it now, because we've went several months now, and it's, the building is already on the National Historic Site, and you buy into it, then you have to adhere to the regulations that are therefore set out. However, if you buy it and it's not already on there, you being the owner, you have to make application to put it on that, still voluntarily.
Unless it's put into a district.
And, well, I don't see anywhere in this county that's
I don't
going to be a
either.
district.
But
I really don't. The motel and the old milling place will be about the only two, and I don't think that it would have anything to do with any of the adjoining property. It'd be the motel.
I think you could have a district all the way down to the old Wilkesboro Road corner, all the way up to the hotel corner and the back street.
That's kind of what I thought.
No, well, you couldn't because of the type, if you go down Main Street, look at some of the buildings, they've already, the structure of the buildings have already been altered. So therefore, they wouldn't qualify based on on what's been placed in here and what we'd be looking at, because the structure of the front of the buildings have been altered. That's what she was trying to say about Mr. Sharp's Tattersall Times. Mr. Sharp altered the front of the building when he remodeled it, made it look really nice, brought it up to date. It has to remain structurally the way it was originally built in order for it to qualify to go on the historical registry. So therefore, any change that you make to that structure externally, like say Joel Harbison's office, it doesn't qualify because of the way the front's been done. And those do not qualify. So it wouldn't be a district. So you understand what I'm saying? I mean, that's based on what's in here and the rules and regulations they're set forth.
I hear what you're saying, but I've also heard what they've said. And just because their building doesn't meet the top 10 criteria or whatever to get it straight in, they would still have to adhere to the rules to some portion, is what she stated a moment ago, correct?
Yes, and yes.
I got a possible solution here. Can we just simply put in there, no districts allowed unless Alexander County Commissioners vote to approve that district?
Yes, you can put that in.
You change it however you want to. Yeah, because that's what we're here for tonight.
Yes.
You know, if there's the changes you want to make, you can, but
I have another question. So when you deem a property that would be suitable for a historical society, your protocol on taking that to the state level, does that come through the commissioners or not for approval, or do you go straight?
I think we could definitely come through the commissioners. You established the committee.
Yeah, but I didn't know if you had to come to our approval prior to submitting. That's why I'm asking.
When a
We will, if you so wish.
Yeah.
in a
Change it.
voluntary situation, I mean, I don't see any need for us to have to
We're
approve
talking
it.
about district, and we're talking.
Yeah, district, I'm,
Voluntarily single, I'm not worried about one
Okay.
bit.
yeah.
The district bothers me.
That's what I said, no districts allowed unless voted on and approved by Alexander County
I need to
Commissioners.
make sure it didn't.
It's
Slip
ultimately
around.
coming to us anyway.
Right, I got you, okay.
I'm totally for that. And I'm totally for everything that you're doing. I'm just thinking of this person over here who has a property, don't want to play, and I don't want to force them to play something they don't want to do. Now, if it's sold and it's in a district and they know that, and, it's different, but to just come in and say you're part of 12 other buildings around you and you got to play by these same rules, I'd have a hard time saying I'm good with that.
Yeah, or no districts allowed unless 100% of the
sad.
property owners agree with it. Yeah. But saying no districts allowed, then you're taking away, if 100% of the property owners do want to be in a district, then you're taking that benefit away from them. So,
Well, if 100% want to be in it anyhow, you don't need,
Yeah.
you wouldn't need it
It's
to
a-
begin with. It's be a moot point.
the biggest thing that we want to stress is this is voluntarily
Yeah.
by the owners of the property. We want it to be voluntarily. We do not want anything that would cause an uproar with anybody, because if they come to us and they want their property on there, we want to do everything we can to preserve the historic element of Alexander County, because so many of our places have been gone, and it will help the property owner in the long run because of the incentives and the things that they will save to be able to preserve that property.
One more question, and I'm finished. Is there any other level of benefit to someone that is just on the historical registry versus someone that is in a historical district?
No,
Okay.
I don't think so.
no, they're pretty much equal. Residential properties, if they do certified rehabilitation to their properties and that property's listed, they automatically get a 10% tax credit for that.
But not like a greater benefit for being in an actual historical district versus standalone property out
Not a
here?
greater benefit,
Okay.
no.
In Hickory, isn't there the Oakwood Historic District over there? Is that not? Yeah.
They have 5 residential historic districts. And it was the Claremont district that the owners of surrounding neighborhoods came to the city of Hickory and wanted to be in that historic district. And they just a few months ago more than doubled the size of the Claremont Historic District because property owners were coming to council saying, we want to be a part of it.
And that's cool, but that's the actual owners coming.
Right.
So I think that's where the difference is.
Well, it would appear to me that basically you certainly can have the power to amend the guidelines as they're written and to include your approval of any district moving forward, which I think might alleviate the initial concern.
Right.
Yeah, I would just
Just add that.
add that to the guidelines that no districts could be approved without 100% of the property owners and approval of the Alexander County Commissioners.
And where we can put that.
So don't think we're against what you're doing.
Oh,
We
no.
just had questions.
And I want to thank you. You really appointed an awesome committee to do this work. And I think that they're going to be happy to come back in.
Well, yeah, 100% attendance for 8 months or whatever is
Oh, yes.
pretty phenomenal, so.
And Mr. Chairman, there's Betty Long's back there, Nancy Coley, and I don't see the other one. But if you two ladies would stand so everybody know who's on that committee, I'd appreciate it, you know? And we have one more that's not here, and that's Helen Chestnut. And they have worked hard, Mr. Chairman. I'll give them credit. They're always there. And they have input. They're not just sitting there. They've studied and they've understood, and I appreciate the service that they've given the county in trying to bring this together.
Excellent. Does anyone in the audience have any other questions or clarifications? Yes, sir.
I was just wondering on the benefits of being on the National Register. You know, you talked about the tax credit, but you're also putting yourself into a lot of scrutiny over what you can do to your house.
To the exterior.
To the, okay. But is there any other benefits besides the tax breaks that you speak of? I mean, there's, you know, bragging rights. Well, I'm on the National Register. Do they get plaques? Do you have to get your own plaques?
Plaques are something that once we identify these properties, that's something that hasn't yet been discussed with the committee, but I'm hoping that they will consider that option. Yes, sir. But no, that hasn't been actually put in writing at this point.
I think that'd be a great idea, do a brass plaque, you know.
So, Ms. Kincaid, Mr. Sharp, we appreciate the work that you guys and the committee have done. And at this time, with no further questions, we'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So move.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor? Motion passes. Now I need a motion to approve with the said amendments of no Well, no residential and no business districts with, no districts.
No districts.
Without property owner approval and approval of the County Board of Commissioners.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion, and that amendment was that it has to be voluntary. Any district has to be voluntary with 100% of the property owners on board, and approval by the Alexander County Board of Commissioners.
We heard the motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion passes unanimously. This time, we have Mr. Jack Sims, who's going to share with us from Carolina Land and Lakes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Mr. French, and Mrs. Starnes. Back on April the 15th of this year, the Commissioners appointed me to serve on the board of the Carolina Land and Lakes, along with Lenny Rogers and Kathy Bunton. The second quarter meeting was held in Morganton, which was on May the 8th. And one of the major topics that the Carolina Land and Lakes talked about was a pellet project. And that project was to wean chicken growers off of propane to pellet heat. And then in June, June the 9th, there was a meeting over at Wilkes Community Agriculture Center, and the results of the 6-week study of propane versus pellets was reviewed and was shared with us. And, you know, as we know, that there are 7 counties that the Carolina Land and Lakes services. It's Alexander County, Caldwell, Catawba, Burke, Gaston, Iredell, and Lincoln. And of course, Carolina Land and Lake is no stranger to Alexander County. You know, we know that Rocky Face was given to the county by Carolina Land and Lakes. So, you know, they're a proactive organization, a group that serves, like I said, the 7 counties. And what's also interesting, in those 7 counties, there's over 1,000 chicken growers in the 7 counties that Carolina Land and Lakes represents. So with that, I'd like to introduce again Melissa Patton, who is the Executive Director of Carolina Land and Lakes, and she's going to share the results of that study of propane versus pellet.
Thank you, Jack. As I presented to you back earlier this year, we've been working on this study for quite some time, and we are still working with NC State to produce a document that we can give to the integrators across the board and to more growers. We have had a little trouble with chicken farmers not wanting to collect data. They just want to farm. They don't want to collect data. So we're working on that. And Tyson is also has talked to us about how we can tie into the control panel to collect what we need without the farmer going through the trouble of doing that for us. So we're still working out some of those details. But since my last trip here, one of the things that's developed that I wanted to share with you tonight is that we are doing, also working with NC State, with the forestry department at NC State, to look at where is the best place to put a pellet mill, because we need one. We're now having to get all of our pellets out of Galax, Virginia. The Godfrey brothers decided to stop producing pellets in Statesville. They went back to just the sawmill. And so everything we're having to import to North Carolina to use. And so in that study that we're looking at resources and where can we get those resources, it looks like Alexander County may be the ideal spot to put that pellet mill. So that would be a $5 million, approximately a $5 million investment in the structure of the pellet mill. And so we are going to be highly dependent on Mr. Sims to guide us as a board as to location and help with some of that supply chain information. And he will keep you up to date, and I will too, as that moves forward. We're working right now to look at U.S. Forest Service to see if there's some funding there, or just USDA for this pellet mill, because it will serve the nonprofit, but it would also serve the for-profit market. And we want to make it viable, economically viable. So that's one thing that I wanted to update you on. Another thing is, we talked about our Firewise program, where we're educating homeowners about how to protect themselves against wildfire. Lenny Rogers and David Huffman, your county forester, have worked with us, and I think they've decided on October 7th, we're going to have a Firewise workshop at Rocky Face Park in the meeting room there, and invite the whole community to come in and talk about how to protect themselves if they are anywhere near woodland areas. So that's something else that'll be going on here pretty soon. Yes?
Who's going to build the pellet factory?
Well, we have been talking to two different groups. We've had a group of investors interested here in Alexander County, and we also had some funding sources told us that the nonprofit, that we needed to own it initially, and we could then sell it to a for-profit company later, but to get it off the ground, to receive the proper grant funding to really get it running, we would need to have ownership. So our board is trying to debate that right now as to whether that's going to be beneficial to make it go or not. We want one piece of the pellet mill to be research, because we want to do some more studies about the resources here. For example, mixing pine with miscanthus, or mixing what's the BTU value of that, and how does that relate in the furnace. So we need to do some more studies. So we would like for the pellet mill to also be able to do that. That piece of research and education is where we come in as a nonprofit, and that would be beneficial to us to share it. And then the for-profit side could continue distributing, not only to poultry, but expanding to large users that need heat.
My knowledge on wood pellets is virtually zero, but I just got a couple questions. So I did remember reading something about either the United States is exporting most of our wood pellets, or we're importing most of our wood pellets, and I can't remember which it is, so.
We are exporting
Okay.
right now.
So most of our wood pellets is going to Europe, is that correct?
To meet their demand,
Correct?
yes.
Right.
Mhm.
So like Denmark and Sweden and some of those places, they are very reliant on wood pellet heat, am I
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So a lot of the debate in North Carolina came from Enviva, which is in the eastern part of the state, and they are a company that came in, built pellet plants in the east, and are shipping everything overseas. They're not selling anything domestically. So I talked to a couple of county managers down in the east, and trying to figure out, because Enviva now has a new agreement to build a new plant down near Hamlet. And so it was rumored among the pellet people that the county commissioners there had said, okay, you can build it here with our support only if you sell a percentage domestically. So our interest in that is we have poultry growers in that area that want wood pellet furnaces, but if they don't have the pellets, they can't. And the Laurinburg plant, they have Laurinburg, North Carolina has a pellet mill there, but they have everything they can produce goes to Tractor Supply, and they sell it all. So they have no real need to accommodate our farmers who need bulk delivery. So, but Enviva kind of gave it all a bad name, because all the pellet industry a bad name, saying that everything was going overseas from North Carolina. We were deforesting North Carolina, which is not true. And we've done a lot of studies. NC State has done a lot of studies about that, and we have access to all of that. But what we were hoping to do is use every pellet domestically and, of course, locally. Produce a local product out of, we were hoping waste would be able to supply it. A discussion this week with loggers and a forester, we may need to look at the roundwood market and really look into that more as the resource, because that's the feedstock supply. It has been the issue all along. So that's what we're working on right now.
Well, they're taking it in Morehead City in those humongous-looking silos that, I mean, and it's going out of there by the big shipload.
Yes.
All the time.
The container loads, yes.
I mean, it's massive what they're
Right.
doing down there.
Wood Grain Millworks in Caldwell County, they produce like the molding and doors and things out of wood. Well, their waste, they're able to produce enough pellets, but everything they produce is put in a container and shipped to the coast. And they have no way of selling to us as small farmers to come into them for the pellets. So again, our farmers are having to go back to Galax, Virginia to get all of our resources. And it would be beneficial not only for the farmers because we've looked at commercial buildings. NC State School for Math and Science, there's building a new facility in Burke County, and they talked to us about using pellets. They're interested and willing as long as they have a steady supply of pellets. So.
And then the waste model, I mean, that's limbs, stumps, roots,
Sawdust.
byproduct, sawdust.
Sawdust and
Yeah.
chips, because if you get into, you can't use stumps, too much dirt. The pelletizer can't handle that kind of dirt. Can't handle too much bark. Too much bark makes it too ashy. The pellet's too ashy, they're not as high quality.
So you're looking at property in Alexander County typically?
We've asked Mr. Sims to start looking into that, where's the potential sites? But we still have a lot of work to do on the financing of the pellet mill itself before we can move forward, and making sure we do have that feedstock to make it viable.
So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
But it's a lot less expensive, I think, from your last presentation, for the farmers or the poultry farmers that were using it.
Absolutely.
Considerably less than the propane.
Yes, we had a farmer this spring, he spent $5,000 on propane for a flock cycle is 7 weeks. In that 7 weeks, he spent $5,000 on propane, and he spent $1,100 on pellets, because we do a side-by-side comparison of our poultry houses that are the exact same dimensions.
Burning natural gas, burning propane, it all creates moisture. And that chemical reaction creates moisture.
He also had a quarter-pound higher bird in the wood houses, which translated to, after 25,000 birds per house, that translates to quite a bit of money.
So is the feedstock, are you looking at it all being part of the waste stream, or you actually kind of bring in, logs or, waste logs, whatever, is that part of it?
That's part of what we're looking at. We talked to, don't know if you know Dr. Dennis Hazel at NC State. He handles the forestry department. And what I specifically asked him for a couple months ago is somebody to tell us what's available in the feedstock west of 77. Tell us everything west of 77 to the state lines, so we would know what's here and we could determine that location. But last week, our board of directors met at Mountain Island Educational State Forest, and one of our board members is a retired forester and now works with the logging industry. And he thinks we need to go away from that model of just looking at the waste stream and start looking at being more competitive in the pulpwood industry. So he's going to get up with Dr. Hazel to kind of keep formulating this formula. And that out of that discussion came Alexander County sits ideally near 77, near rail. There's rail available here to ship it to wherever we would need it if you were producing a lot that the local economy couldn't support. You could export it, obviously.
Well, what was, Bud, what was your neighbor's name?
Wendell Kirkland.
Wendell Carpenter.
Yes,
Yes.
Wendell used to be on our board of directors,
Yes.
and
So Wendell talked to me about this 10 years ago, so I know it's been
yes.
on your radar for a while.
It has been, and finally has had enough financial support from North Carolina Department of Agriculture to do these test studies, and so now they're wanting us to sprout our wings and fly on our own. And so, but the pellet meal, we just need to know, and it's your representative here, Representative Elmore, talked to us. Jack had invited him to talk about this and the prospect of having this pellet mill here. And he said he felt like we needed to bring another expert in that could look at this business model and help us on that planning side. And so I think that's because we have a lot of expertise on our board of directors, and we're very varied, but nobody could bring it all together, and I think that was a good recommendation, and that's where the board is leaning to go.
Okay.
Anything else? All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll now hear from Ms. Alicia Stamey and Alexander County Parks Plan and Dusty Ridge Plan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, for letting me speak tonight. I just want to give you a brief update on the Alexander County Park facilities. Most of you are familiar with the fact that Alexander County and the Western Piedmont Council of Governments are in the process of preparing and planning for two different projects. The first is a county-wide parks and recreation plan, which includes all county-owned parks. The second is a site-specific plan for Dusty Ridge Park. Completing these two planning projects will provide a solid plan for county leaders regarding parks over the next 10 years. These plans will also support opportunities for future recreational funding from various grants. So over the coming months, part of the planning for these projects will consist of public outreach, establishment of a Parks Advisory Board, along with developing a unified code of ordinances for all of Alexander County parks. So our public outreach consists of a public survey that has been distributed. We are inviting folks to complete those. This survey will be live until September 30th of this year. We have an online survey, and a link to this survey can be found on the Alexander County website and Facebook page, the Rocky Face Park website and Facebook page as well. We have paper surveys that can be found at Rocky Face Park and other Alexander County facilities. If folks want to fill out the paper surveys, they can mail those to the Alexander County Administration Building. There are a total of 16 questions, and this survey will give us insight as to how the public feels about our current parks and what they would like to see in the future. Our second public outreach consists of inviting folks to attend public meetings that are scheduled in August, September, and October. We will be advertising these meetings in the local newspaper, county websites, and social media. There are 5 total meetings in different areas of the county, and all of these meetings are set for 6 p.m. The first meeting will be August the 29th at the Bethlehem Park Picnic Shelter. The second meeting will be September the 3rd at the Alexander County Administration Building in the downstairs meeting room. The third meeting will be September 10th at the Stony Point Library Meeting Room. The fourth meeting will be September the 12th at Dusty Ridge Park Picnic Shelter, and the very last meeting will be October the 3rd at Rocky Face Park Multipurpose Building. We are hoping that the estimates and the facilities to be developed will be completed around October, November of this year, with the final plans presented to commissioners for adoption. And then we will begin preparing for the Parks and Recreation Trust Fund application from December through March of next year. The actual Partif grant isn't due until May of next year, so we have some time to prepare for that. So we've got a lot of exciting changes coming for our parks. We just wanted to let you know about the survey and the meetings, and I'm very excited to be a part of it.
Thank you. We're excited too.
Alicia, I got a comment. On the survey being distributed out, how is that, I've heard the ways it's being distributed, but how does the people know to look in those areas for it? Because
Well-
I'd like to get a real good general survey, that's to see what most of the people would want.
Well, we've posted on the Alexander County webpage and the Facebook page and the Rocky Face website and the Rocky Face page. We've also put an article in the newspaper, and we've distributed those paper surveys at Rocky Face Park. We also sent an email out to all departments to to put those paper surveys out. So the last that I've heard, I think we've had close to 900 submitted. So,
A lot of people listen to In the Know on the radio too. If you can get a
Yes.
slot on there, that would
Yes.
be great. A lot of people hear that.
yes.
Mr. Chairman and Alicia, I guess too, I think we filed for part of, is this beyond what we're going to be doing at Dusty Ridge and Wittenberg Landing anyway?
Yes, sir.
This is
Yes, sir.
for all the
All
parks in
parks.
the county?
That's right.
So, okay, thank you.
Any more questions, comments?
No other questions? Thank you very much for sharing with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. French has a resolution by the governing body of applicant Alexander County Water Line Extension Project number HSRPD 170098.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Resolution is required as we move forward with our water project. We have been offered a state bond loan in the amount of $5,436,528. Resolution just says that we're going to follow the guidelines from Department of Environmental Quality, and it's required as part of the process in order that we move forward. And we recommend that commissioners adopt this.
You've heard the recommendation. Do we have a motion to approve the resolution?
So move.
Do we hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion passes unanimously. And Mr. French, share with us, please, Alexander County ABC Board recommendations.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appoint Judy Kaywood for 1 year, Donnie Teague for 2 years, Gerald Davis for 3 years. And this will be our Alexander County ABC Board.
We've heard the recommendation from County Manager French. Do we have a motion to approve the recommendations?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the recommendations as stated.
And a second.
Second.
All in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion passes unanimously. The budget amendments, Mr. French, number 6 through 9.
Budget amendment number 6 is the budget for additional fencing and other maintenance and repair items at Rocky Face Park from proceeds received from trail race registrations. Number 7, budget amendment 7 is adjust project budget for additional services to be performed by engineer for the sewer project. Conduct preliminary evaluation of the Phase 2 sewer project and effects of Phase 1 system for Phase 1 system, upgrade engineer's report, revise plan sheets, bid documents, and modify and resubmit for sewer permit with calculations and new cost analysis. This is for the increased force main that'll go on Chigger Ridge and Shiloh Church Road. That's what the $9,989 is for. Number 8 is increase the general fund match for the sewer line extension project to pay for additional engineering. That's for that. That's where the other part of it is, $9,989. And budget amendment number 9 is to adjust the project budget for the increase to the NCDEQ State Reserve Project loan for the water project. The increase in loan funds was approved by North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality in July of 2019. So we're getting an additional $465,193 from the state.
We like that.
Yes, we do. That'll eventually mean that'll be less what we'll have in it. So, I'll be glad to try to
Mr.
answer.
Chairman, will this get these projects closer to being completed, or?
It'll get them closer to moving along. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve budget ordinance amendments number 6, number 7, number 8, and number 9.
Heard the motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion passes unanimously. Okay, at this time, I'd like to open a discussion of the industrial park sewer. I am honored tonight to be part of what I consider to be a big step in leadership collaboration between the town and the county. It's been said, what's good for Taylorsville is good for Alexander County, and what's good for Alexander County is good for Taylorsville, and I truly believe that. What impacts one impacts the other, and here in just a moment, we'll have seated around the table the people who the great citizens of Alexander County have entrusted and the great citizens of Taylorsville have entrusted to make decisions and move us forward. So people believe in our judgment, and we want to sit and discuss. Good or bad, we can't change the past or anything that was, not that anything was wrong or not that anything was right, but the past is the past, but we can change the future. And together we can build a vision, see our wonderful communities flourish. You know, we're not Huntersville, and we're not, we're not Concord, and we're not Statesville. We're Alexander County, and we're Taylorsville. And a lot of things that make us very unique are things that sometimes a lot of people, it attracts them, and then they want to make it different. So I think that we are obligated to doing all that we can do to preserve the uniqueness of our wonderful county and our town of Taylorsville, and to do so while we're able to maintain those unique features that we have. Tonight, we want to address sewer and infrastructure. It's kind of interesting. Town has a sewer plant, and we have some potential sewer customers, so sounds like a good game to be involved in. We've got past written and unwritten agreements, but we want to look at how we can move forward in a win-win situation. You know, win-lose, somebody loses, but win-win, everybody's happy. So this, my friends, is the task at hand tonight and the focus of our conversation. And I guess we're going to gather around the table here, and we will start with Mr. Odom and Mr. French to begin the discussions as we look forward at where we're going. Oh, and to our TV audience, if by chance your audio is not good, we apologize for that, but we have to keep an open meeting, and to do anything other than that would have required us to move where we would have maybe had better sound, but the meeting would not have been as public. Guys, go ahead and start us.
Well, I think first, as we start talking about sewerage, it would be a wise decision, or something at least for the commissioners on our side to talk about, is the time frame for the Shell building. And I think the opinion is whether we ought to postpone it or do something with it, because we're open to bids at the end of this month. And I don't think we should do that or try to move forward with it until we have an agreement. So I just want to say that sort of right out of the chute. I think that's important to do that.
So
So we're looking at 2 million in a budget and another 600,000 for,
Every bit of
for,
that, yes.
at least for.
We don't know what the cost is gonna be, because we haven't had the bids, I just wanna say that, but it,
2.7, 2.5 million.
but that way, what we're talking about, as we all know, because a lot of us have been here for a long time, myself included, that this has been something we have discussed on and off for years. And whether it's been back in the 90s or the 2000s, we had different kinds of meetings. We had a meeting back in 2009 where we talked about trying to combine a number of things like inspections and things like that with it. David has provided us with 3 written agreements and 2 capital projects. I think one is for Millersville, which we participate in for $15,000 a year. The other is for Hidden Night for that sewer project, and we both, the county and the town, placed money in it, put money in it, but mostly that was grants. We couldn't have done it any other way unless there was a lot of grants for it. So I just wanted to start that, but I think the shell building is very important. And one thing, the reason why I said what I said is that this is the first time the county has been interested in undertaking this by itself. And so that's a big chunk of money to put in a project. And we don't have a sewer. We really don't feel like we have an up-to-date sewer agreement, I guess, where we need to all be on the same page or close to be on the same page. And I would say that the agreements with the city of Hickory, who we have agreements with sewer and water. The water agreement works like this. The water agreement, we split the revenue 50-50. We put in the infrastructure. Plain and simple. That's the way it's been. With sewer, it's not 50-50 yet, but it will be in a couple of years. As we move forward with the sewer project, we'll be putting in the infrastructure, but we'll be splitting the revenue 50-50 because they're charged outside rates. And that's sort of the starting point, I guess, for us in this discussion. David has provided you information that shows their sewer is losing money. So, you want to?
Well, this is a long history, actually, between the town and the county. For 24 years, we've had a partnership. Now, we don't, and I'm speaking for Mayor Hallman, Mayor Pro Tem Poole, Councilman Robinette, and Councilman Elliott. All those agreements go back to the 90s. Now, the wastewater plant, which is just right across the bypass, was built in 1955. So we went almost 42 years with no outside sewer connections, meaning that it only served the municipal limits of Taylorsville. And in that time, in 1955, there was one lift station. The first lift station that was ever built was in Northwood Park, the subdivision. Now we maintain 33 lift stations. Now in the 90s, there was a request. Broyle Hill needed sewer, Pier Point. So that came first. And so the county sought grant funds and it was installed. Now speaking of the industrial park in and of itself, if you just took that discussion and that little piece of infrastructure, it is highly beneficial to the county and the town that we have those jobs, that the infrastructure is in place. But that being said, we maintain 33 lift stations throughout Alexander County, with the exception of Bethlehem, which the city of Hickory, they maintain that. And at the end of the day, as it stands today, with the 2 sewer users that are in place, last year the industrial park generated, and I included for your review, just how much the one business generated in outside sewer rates, because all outside sewer rates are double rate.
What page are you looking at?
When you look at the one business that has operated for a full year, the film company, we just went back 12 months, and at outside rates, they generated that generated $3,046.38, which, when you look at the power bill to run that lift station for 1 month, and that's a snapshot, is $89.36. So a good average would be $100 a month because it varies with use. So we, as a town, simply can't look at if we looked at just the industrial part as a profit or loss statement, then that would kind of skew. But where things have improved going forward is with the addition of Craftmaster Sewer, Freightmaster Sewer, that was a county project, Midnight Elementary Sewer, that was a town project, grant funded for the majority of it. But so we have to look at the entire segment, line segment, all the way to SureTake now, in my opinion. Because if we view it just as in the industrial part, then we would, you're really not generating a profit even at outside rates if you look just solely at the industrial part. But if you look from the industrial part to SureTake, yes, there is some revenue, but it's when somebody looks at outside rates and they see gross, that looks like a large number, but it's the net and all the expenses that you have to back out on a monthly basis that really provide the tail of the tape. The town council last May agreed to contribute towards this project, but we would certainly need to do that in annual installments. And the board at that time is $80,000 toward that. So, and that they looked at the entire profit loss for the entire line segment and subtracted that out. So that's where the $20,000 annual over 4 years came to help with the gravity sewer. We just don't have the reserve funds to undertake large-scale sewer projects without grant funds, and additionally serving entities that don't pay town taxes and they're not in the city limits. But I think I speak for the board that we certainly want to be a partner going forward. I think you've worked out a deal with Energy United regarding the water in the industrial park, and we're pleased with that. We just wish our balance sheet equaled theirs, and then this wouldn't be a point of discussion.
And I think with the sewer too, and I didn't mention it, is one thing we're looking into is an ARC grant that would pay 50%. Also, the county, what the county's policy has been as far as both water and sewer, and mostly water, since we really don't receive any revenue on the sewer, is that we reinvest the water. All the money that we make at the end of the year basically goes back in the water system and doesn't go anywhere else. So that's why we've been able to do so many water projects and what we're doing right now. It will not require a rate increase. We just keep reinvesting in the water project, and it's hadn't been that long ago when we really started being more aggressive with this, and right now we have over 5,000 water customers. So we've taken a big step, and this $5 million project that we're getting ready to start will be a big step for us too. So,
David, and I wish I'd have studied more for this meeting than I did. I just really did. You guys got some grant funds a few years back. Was that ARC grant? It was? Okay. I'm just going by memory. So you made improvements to the lines. I know there was some problems with some of the lines. Did y'all make any improvements to the actual sewer plant itself?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Okay.
We've actually completed over $4.5 million worth of upgrades. And so, yes, we have spent a lot of money through the years. And actually, it's in excess of $13 million if you want to go back, decade plus. But we've made significant strides at our plant. But our plant, as it sits now, was the ideal location in 1955 to serve Taylorsville. It was the ideal location. Thankfully, the commissioners, the council members back then had the foresight that, that plant was originally permitted for 860,000 gallons a day. And originally, once it discharged, it went right into Styrewalk Creek, right as it left the plant. Subsequently, the state came back and the rules continued to change. Then they had to add an outfall line, which made the plant where it could be upgraded to 1.2 million a day. Well, currently we average 350 to 400,000 a day. It varies if school's not in session, etc. And when you get to 80%, you've got to have your plan ready for expansion. We are nowhere close to that.
Where are you at?
We're below 45%. Yeah.
So is capacity up over 1 million?
We could go to 1.2 million a day.
Okay.
We could do that. We could treat 1.2 million a day. That would be the max. Now, the issue is, both for the county and the town, is our topography in Alexander County is where valleys, hills, valleys, hills, valleys, hills.
Pumping and pushing.
Well, that's a $250,000 proposition to build a pump station, one pump station. Not to mention your gravity and your force main. So neither one of us can take very large steps unless we receive grant funding, because neither one of us have the reserve revenues to undertake such projects. But we've spent a lot of money. The town councils, they've approved the most. When you look at technology, and I hope at a future meeting that we can showcase some of this, because it's mutually beneficial. Each town employee, and there's only, and I brought these because without these folks, we would fall flat on our face. These 5 employees look after our collective wastewater system countywide, with the exception of Bethlehem.
You got 6.
Well, 2 of them are water, 2 of them are drinking water, and the remaining of them work in the wastewater. But from Ellendale School to Sure Tate to Old Wittenberg School on 16th South, these folks are not only the front line, they're the second line and the third line. But from their cell phones, if a county-owned pump station signals an alarm, we all know about it. We can see it in real time. The duty cycle.
And you have to be able to see.
Oh my goodness.
You're going to run some problems.
Yes, because the last thing you want is wastewater is a good thing as long as it's either flowing downhill or it's being pumped uphill. It's when you have problems and thunderstorms and tropical depressions. Now that's when the rubber meets the road. But these folks right here, if we didn't have them, we would be in a world of hurt. So I'm of the opinion that, I know we're getting off topic and it's getting broad, but at the end of the day, our challenge is not going to be whether we can maintain what we have when you look at it in a mechanical connotation. We've got to have the human capital to maintain our infrastructure. And it's one of the best jobs in the United States of America. But a lot of people, they don't want to have anything to do with wastewater. Well, if you don't have wastewater, you don't have industry, and you don't have job growth. And frankly, I would encourage an internship that would be mutually beneficial for the county and the town. Because if you look at those folks, some of them color their hair, some of them have no hair. But there's not a lot.
Luke's the only one with all his hair in the right color.
Yeah, Luke's the only. He's the youngest guy on the block, and he's a grade 3 collection. So
I was with those guys at a baseball game one night with David and Luke, and an alarm went off somewhere.
Yeah.
And I was amazed when they pulled out their phone. I said, "What are you doing?" And they told me what they was doing. That was pretty cool.
Yeah,
You're talking about these employees. So are they in, do you have like a sewer fund like we have a water fund? So
Yes.
so they're paid out of that
100%.
sewer fund? Okay.
All of those employees are paid out of water and sewer fund. And also the folks, when you come up to town hall, if you pay them your water and sewer bill, they're paid out.
So is it water and sewer together?
Yes, one enterprise fund. Yes, they're all paid out.
So
of the
really,
same
if
pot
you
of
say
money.
if the sewer grows, you ain't got enough people to monitor.
Without technology, and the days of working blind are gone because, the environmental concerns and social media and everything, any spill makes the news, whether it's Lake Hickory, Lake Norman, that prior to 1973, the regulations were certainly not as stringent, but staffing wise, we're staffed as competent and as lean as we can be. And that's one thing that we kind of like the idea about in those past agreements that said those county customers, when and if the county has the capacity to treat their own wastewater, then those customers would become county customers. When you monitor 33 lift stations, not to mention your plant, and that's your human capital, there's not a lot of margin for error. And it wouldn't be, and I don't want to talk out of turn, but this is just conversation. They certainly call the shots. I just, work at their stead. But in an ideal world, the town of Taylorsville, if we could maintain what we own, and we could help the county get to a point where they could maintain what they own, because you already have your own rate structures in 16 South, and there's nothing that would stop the county from billing those outside accounts, because it's much easier to bill and collect from somebody. If you sell them the drinking water and you treat their wastewater, then you have the ability to go turn that meter off for non-payment. Now, when we branch out to Stony Point, Midnight, 16 South, Old Wittenberg School, the issue becomes is they're Alexander County water customers, and they're our sewer customers. Well, short of going through environmental health and digging up their service line, you're plugging it, your hands are kind of tied. So from a staffing component, let me say I, because I don't want to speak for board members who are elected. I'm of the belief that someday if we trained a new generation of folks where the county could maintain their stuff and have their own rate structure, just like they do in Bethlehem and 16 South, it's not like that plant would stop running. It would still have the capacity to treat. And this is also my opinion, and certainly not the board's, because they have say over the outfall line. The county would have a long, arduous process to get a new permit to discharge in the Catawba River. When they put the outfall line in, it's permitted for 1.2 million gallons per day. It would be far easier to put a package plant that discharged into the existing outfall line, because that permit's already valid. Now, the town has we have no advantage, and frankly, we're kind of bound by statute. It would not be advantageous for the town to treat wastewater from Bethlehem, because then you're adding a whole new dynamic to it. However, where our outfall line runs, most of Tigtown and up in that area with gravity, you could find a way to put a package plant and tie into the town's outfall line, which would mean, capacity. That's an ideal world. But until that day, we'll continue to maintain the entire system. Gladly do so. But at the end of the day, any citizen can look at the balance sheet for both the county's water, sewer system, and ours, and you can see that neither one of us are flush, because if we put both our net revenues together at year end, it wouldn't even be $500,000. Well, just our wastewater system, the town's wastewater system, is a $13 million system. So if you're on, that's just the towns. So,
1 to 6
You're
years
talking
of
about
combined
lines.
revenue to replace it.
You're talking about lines in the ground and all that, correct?
Just in the town, just in the town. So,
But before this year, with the Hickory sewer system, Hickory was charging the inside rates to the customers. Several years ago, we added a $5 fee. We weren't receiving anything, nothing. So if you look at our sewer fund, it looks like you're thinking, how can that be $20,000 or $30,000? That's pretty small, but that's what it is. That's from that $5 charge. Now, as we have started the process to install sewer, that's going to start going up and eventually be double rates. It'll have to be double the inside rates for us, so we can generate and pay that service.
I'm not happy about that because I'm one of those sewer customers, but I know what we have to do
Right.
to maintain the system.
Right.
And same thing here, we've got, before it was just here and there, take care of this problem, take care of that problem. We're doing a little bit more together now. We got to come up with something that's fair for both sets of taxpayers. And, if we're going to work together, then we got to work something out ahead of time because we're doing more together. And we got to have a clear direction which way we're going.
right. I think we would do in which it's never the intent of the town because every board member I've ever worked for, they've said, if it's good for the county, it's good for us and vice versa. And at the end of the day, as the way the industrial park stands right now, we would be giving you a bad deal if we said, tell you what, y'all collect 100% of the revenue out there in the industrial park, charge whatever you want, but in turn you maintain that lift station. We would be doing you a disservice. It wouldn't be good, to do that. But we truly understand that revenue sharing only comes, you have to have the initial investment. And I don't know how you quantify, if you put old agreements past, consolidation is not a bad word if the efficiencies benefit the taxpayers.
Everybody wins in the deal.
Yeah. So,
But right now,
Everybody can't win in everything.
no.
and right now with the sewer, we by not receiving revenue, it's hard for us to keep reinvesting in it unless there's something else. And as we do this, there's a process where we're actually going to have a sewer at Stony Point Elementary School. And there's been some interest in extending that line, but I'm not sure how that happens if there's not some kind of way to address what David just talked about. And we have no revenue to pay for it. So unless we could get 100% grant, which is pretty tough to do, you might get some really low interest money like we've been able to do a lot of times, and the town has too. And even some zero interest. I'm just not sure. It's just something we'd have to look into to try to work out some solution.
Yeah, we just need, right now, the taxpayers or, some form or another, taxpayers, whether it be local, federal, or state, they're paying to put the sewer lines in, all right? And then the town is getting the revenue off of that. Whether it's much or little, I understand there's expenses and, you got employees and all that. But just like the water fund that we run, we want to put all that money back into more sewer. So you would have more customers. But we need something going forward to guide us and to guide you and to feel like, it's fair for both. That's all it amounts to.
That's certainly a fair assessment. Where the issue in human capital is always your biggest asset, but it's also your largest cost. And the thing, the county's in the process of paying for capacity. We're in the process of paying for capacity. The difference between Alexander County and the town of Taylorsville is you contract out your maintenance to another party. And, you know, we don't, with the exception of our partnership with Energy United. They help us immensely regarding, you know, line breaks, et cetera. But the difference boils down to just the staffing and the staffing requirements going forward. You know, when a pump station breaks, it's great to get a grant for a pump station. And Mr. French has been in this business a lot longer than I have. There was a time when you could get 100% grant for a station.
Sure it was.
You know, and now if you get 50% for any project, you're doing really good. The problem is, it's not so much when you cut the ribbon and you say, well, we've expanded sewer or water to this area. The problem is, it's 20 years, you know, forward. You understand, because you're in the business. You know, it's O&M, it's replacement, it's technology changes.
Sure.
So the town has no general fund debt at this moment. Now, we're thankful for that, but we've got a really small budget. We got a little over $4 million on the enterprise fund side, which is, it stands for itself. If people quit drinking water or flushing toilets, none of us are going to worry about debt service. You know, my goal as manager in a certain division of the town board, you know, we're sitting on unused potential, unused capacity. If the town had a lot less debt service on the enterprise fund side, then they could do a whole lot more partnering and investing. But at the end of the day, when you clear $250,000 on a good year, and then last year was not so good because of all the storms and all the maintenance, and we lost 83,000. So, you know, if we could reduce those swings, you know, that plant should be running at 60%. It should be, by whatever means necessary. And if the town said of the, there's been 35 to 38 outside sewer acceptances. If the town said, okay, everything going forward, 2019 forward, you know, we're going to charge our outside rates, and then we're going to share the difference. At the end of the year, unless you've got a really big user, you wouldn't have enough revenue to build half a pump station.
Say that again, because you kind of lost me. You got 38 what?
Okay. If the town said, we're talking about revenues.
Yeah.
And sharing costs, et cetera. If the town said, and this is hypothetical, there's been roughly 38 outside sewer acceptances in the history.
Acceptance?
Yeah,
You mean?
for outside of the city limits.
agreed to take
Yeah, well, yeah.
You,
There's only been-
Okay, so
yeah.
you got 38 outside sewer customers, that's it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And the thing about it is, if the town said going forward, any new customers, you know, set up a fund. The town commits X dollars, the county commits X dollars, equal into a pot for sewer repairs or sewer expansion. Unless we got a significant user, and there's only one significant user in this whole county for wastewater, and that's the prison.
Right.
That's our the largest customer. And, you know, it's a long process. You know, it's a long process. It is. But I think the way to move forward is, even though Energy United is certainly not in the wastewater business, they're in the water business, but we're in lockstep with them, and our relationship has been really good. They're a lot larger than we are, but you know, if our future agreements, if they look and smell and feel like our partnerships with Energy United, you know, Alexander County Energy United, those agreements feel good because it's truly shared investment. And you know, if both governing bodies, truthfully, a grant is a gift, and you have to work for it. But at the end of the day, I think the discussion going forward, it needs to be about earnest money. You know, whether it's help to match a grant. But at some point, we'd really like to grow our tax base. We don't know why these new businesses don't want to be in the city limits, but I have a pretty good reason why, idea. But, you know, from my board, we're here to help.
Water, for the most part, is easier to deal with because you don't have all the pumping problems that you have and all the environmental things that you have.
Yeah.
And I have been at this a long time. When I was in Newton, Carolina Mills, we had just started a project to build the sewer plant to 10 million gallons a day, and they were using almost 2 million gallons of water and sewer a day, and they closed. So we had to regroup and meet with the industry, and it worked out. But in this case, you don't have that kind of capacity in the rest of them. So if something would happen on the prison side, it would be devastating.
Yeah.
You know, we don't have really any large water customers outside of them in the county. We depend on residential, which is a tough way to do sewer on the sewer side.
It is.
We have less than 400 sewer customers in Bethlehem. That's why this thing that we're doing in Bethlehem and as phase one is so important. We've got to get customers. We estimate it would take about 1,200 sewer customers to make us break even with our debt service. So there's lots of challenges. But to make a big step, it's harder. So we have more expense. And with building a shell building, that's sort of where we are. And I think this is a good discussion about that part of it. How we resolve it, I'm not sure, but we can sit and talk about it.
When do you have a timeline when you may is the engineering complete on the gravity for the shell building?
The shell building's going to be open, bids will be open later this month.
I'm talking for the wastewater, not the.
He's about finished. He told us last week that it could be bid in October.
If you've got an ARC application, you certainly want to wait and see what the outcome of that would be.
Yeah, well, I'm talking about, but that's just for Bethlehem, but not the ARC is for this pump station.
Okay.
I think the question is the design to the shell building. Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
We opened bids. We could open bids on the 29th, and honestly, what we could do, if the bids are $2.5 million, I would think the commissioners, it's up to their decision. I don't see how we could do it.
That's for the shell building.
That's for the shell building.
That doesn't count the sewer.
That's not
That doesn't count the sewer at all. And the estimate is 2 million, is what we talked about, or maybe it's around 2.2. If it's a lot more than that, and honestly, with the sewer, I don't see how we do it.
And your cost estimate for that gravity sewer was?
For the pump station was about $600,000. So even with a ARC grant, that's the estimate is not new.
Yeah.
So if it's 700,000 or more, that's a lot at one time, and that sewer money comes from our general fund.
It's hard for us to do it alone.
Yeah. So that's why I think it's better to maybe drop back and either punt, or we could open the bids and see what it costs. But at the end of the day, unless there's some kind of change, I don't know how we do it all that way.
Yeah, we're out of capital.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder if Red Leg might be an option like we did and the town did in years past and the county did too.
The zero interest loan that Energy United got, we've gotten, the EDC has gotten a grant in the past.
Yeah.
But I mean, you still have money, we still have the debt.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question, Dave? And you may not know the answer to this, but, well, you're at 40% capacity right now. Actually, I got two questions. So you're 40% capacity on the system, and you've only got 38 outside customers on sewer. Is there a reason why you have not went after more residential customers, or, is that just?
As far as outside the city limits, it's just so cost prohibitive to put gravity sewer,
No, what I'm saying is, if you've got a line already going through there, is there a reason why you haven't went after?
Yeah, we don't have the legal authority outside the city limits to mandate a hookup. There's a provision, environmental health has, but,
And they won't ask for it unless their septic system fails.
That's what I mean.
Yeah,
Okay,
they're
so
mine.
you've not had anybody really come to you and ask for it?
And like me, I built my house, but there was no sewer line that ran out just past West End, so I had to put it in the septic system. So as long as that septic system worked, yeah, so, but that's what a lot of people, especially.
I won't need it until my septic tank fails.
well, you can buy a sewer tap now a whole lot cheaper than you can do a panel system.
Oh, yes.
But
I'm getting ready to put in a-
that's all the acceptances, going back to,
I'll be putting in a septic system here in a couple of weeks, it'll be $10,000.
and you can get a sewer tap for outside. Put this one for 2,000.
So let me ask you this then, and you're talking about maintenance and these guys are, doing great on maintenance. I would guess that the prison causes a lot of maintenance issues that you have. Am I correct on that?
You are 100% correct. And with it being our number one customer, and it is, but with your number one customer comes your
Number one problem.
And these guys are probably flushing whatever and anything down the toilet.
But there's a separator though at the facility that separates all of the solids.
Okay.
It's not supposed to get through.
right. But we would love to host a cookout and a field trip, where the council and the commissioners could get together. Because a lot of these assets we maintain, they're county assets, but yeah, by far. And which, if we could get a second state facility or federal facility, that, not even, we just need people to flush, whether it's a college, whether it's a hospital, or a mental institution. We need people to use the bathroom.
Well, if we get lucky, maybe they'll bring the hospital they talked about, they just never done it.
That's right.
Because we're online to get that hospital.
Yeah.
And with the funding and everything that's happened with DOT and everything else down east, there's gonna be a long time before we see money come west.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a while.
Well,
look,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's all right, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, what you said right then, you need people to flush. Well, we wanna do more projects, just like the Borealis, they're already talking about possibly, expanding, talking about this spec building, we don't know how many jobs this is gonna bring in, how many people it's gonna bring into the industrial plant. That's people and customers and, revenue. I don't feel comfortable, and I know these guys probably don't either, going forward with some big projects without having something to direct us and that's fair and equitable for both sides. And that's just, this is where we're at. It's not we're trying to, nickel and dime you guys, but we just want to make sure we're all going in the same direction.
I agree. There's nothing wrong with that.
Well, do you think that what we could do is, do you think, if everybody's in agreement, just let Rick and David sit down and see what they can work out that would be best for the county, best for the town? And I'm sure that all of us will have input, because there's not a doubt in my mind, if Rick talks to Dave, David's going to talk to you all. And let's do that and see if there's something that we can work out, because I think all of us sitting at this table right here, right now, we want to see Alexander County grow in a controlled way. We don't want to lose our agriculture area and all the things that we see. And see if there's something that we can do to sit down so that we can put some kind of revenue back in order to expand, and also to work together. If we have a ruptured sewer line, if we have a lift station go down, if we have a pump station go down, if there's something that we can all not do together in order to work to maintain the existing part that we've all worked together to do. Now, I understand everything inside your city limits. I mean, that's mine, baby. Don't mess with it, okay? Totally respect that every way. But I know that in the past, from everything that I have seen, in the way that we've done things to try to make things better, to let you two guys sit down and come up with something, because I really don't want to see us stop doing the expansion at the industrial park. And I don't want to see this little I mean, it's not little by no means, but I don't want to say $600,000 in this county standing in the way of us being more progressive to make it better. And it's going to cost us no matter what, because you're going to have sewer coming in, you're going to have additional cost. We're going to have additional cost, and find some way that the county could benefit a little bit, and not do a cooperative. You don't want to call it a cooperative, don't call it cooperative. But if there's some way that we can work together to do a joint venture to make things work out, because I think everybody with the revenue sources that we have together, that surely to goodness there's some way that we can do something to improve and make the sewer better.
Well, I don't think it stops the sewer. I think there's probably
Other things too, yeah.
Well, with the approval of the county board and the town board, and this is just, most citizens are not even aware of this, but, the town used to collect its own taxes. And so we had to buy a Manatron tax collection system. That's not, we've got 2,095 people that live in the town total. Well, it's furnished about $50,000 computer system to collect. So we contract with Alexander County. We pay them to collect our taxes. We pay them to do zoning. We pay them to do building inspections. Animal control. So, at the end of the day, that's general fund money that we certainly gladly spend with the county, because frankly, it's duplication of services. And that's one great thing about the Trio building, is that's one-stop shopping for somebody that lives in town with an ETJ. They can get their zoning permit, building permit, the whole 9 yards. In an ideal, hypothetical world, this is just ideal, hypothetical world, if there could ever be a way where the town, we're really good in the wastewater business and pretty proficient in the water business, but we have to rely on our partner, Energy United. They maintain their water tanks. There's 1 million gallons of storage on Winnie's Mountain. That same water pressurizes the water system in Bash Tie. Now just imagine, had the town not had that upper tank, how would Bash Tie be pressurized? I don't know. It was just fate, luck, whatever. That was, but if we could focus on the wastewater business and find a way to collaborate in the water business, we have a strong friend. And we have a long-standing relationship with the county on water. But at the end of the day, we buy $5,000 a year in water from Alexander County. $5,000 a year. So we've got some key connection points, and frankly, we'd like to be able to buy more. It may help the system. But now that our system, if we could ever get it, our water system, and I know this is off topic, if we could ever get a hydraulic study that says, okay, this is what works now, this because you have Bells River Pump Station, then the town added the 500,000 gallon tank on Winnie's Mountain, then Alexander County added this when Larry built the Ford Place, and that interconnect, and we've added 4 connections with Energy United. That it's pie in the sky, but
You like to see a master plan, is that what you're saying?
or a hydraulic.
Look at the hydraulic
basic-
system we
yeah,
talked about.
Yeah.
To see what makes it all go.
Yeah, how would it work? How would it work?
And David Odom has suggested that you all come to Town Hall and let us make the presentation to show you. I know you may understand it, but I think you will, if we show you the whole system, the way we put it together, that you'll have a better understanding of that. So that's proposed, if you so choose to do that.
I think it's going to be pretty labor intensive, but it really needs to be about the boards, because all the other decisions going back to the 90s, it was the boards that made the decision. And of course, Rick and I go back a very, very long way. And
You signed one of those agreements.
Yeah, I mean.
So you've signed those agreements on both sides.
But, if the town could ever someday focus on wastewater, we have a good ally in water, and the county's certainly an ally as well, but, the thing that handicaps us there is the town's rate structure is lower than both the Energy United's and the county. But that being said, the poverty rate, the poverty level in Taylorsville is about 7 to 10 points higher than if you drive in any direction. So, our board has to continually be cognizant and aware that their market that they serve is entirely different from a market 10 minutes away.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Well, all these agreements is really good. What we're looking for, I think, is something like, starting from today going forward that everybody can live with. And I know for me, it's been, a good meeting already. Just, we can come together and talk about things. I found out things that I didn't know. Y'all probably found out things that you didn't know about the county too. So, that's how we can get closer together on the same track. So, but I just, Brian mentioned Borealis. I think that's just one step. I mean, I was impressed. I think Kenny was there and probably a couple others. We had that movie up there where, China, Austria, Taylorsville, North Carolina.
That was pretty neat.
And
It's neat.
I'm
Global.
looking for us to do a whole lot of that stuff, with things that are coming on. So, but I think we need to get together and we do something that's good for everybody. Whether there's actually any money there or not, if there is some money that comes in, then we know, it goes this way and this way. So that's kind of, I think, what we're kind of looking for.
Well, regionalism and consolidation is going higher on grant funds.
It really does.
If the town goes it alone, well, just one example, the pump station on 90 East beside Mexico Viejo. The town, that's the pump station that provides water at one point from Energy United. The town sought that grant out. Thankfully, they saw it was a joint effort. The grant paid for the pump station, and now it's Energy United Waters pump station. We certainly get more to maintain that. But I think going forward, I would highly recommend that our applications be joint.
That's exactly where I was coming from when I said working together. Because everything that I hear in every meeting I've gone to on the state and local level, even on the federal level, when you're attending these meetings, they talk about regionalization. I mean, so we've got to look at these things in order for the quality of life to improve for all the citizens of the county and the town. I mean, so that's where I'm coming from to say if there's something that we can do.
Some may get fixated on control, but I'm telling you, maintaining 33 lift stations where if you have an upset or a spill, and the fines can be 15 to 20,000 per day,
You pay a little bit of attention.
Sometimes you say, well, is it really worth controlling all that? It's a weighty proposition, and it's good when everything works right. And it's bad when nothing works right.
David, on the page 1 here, it says current assets, $2,416,763.
Is that on the rates dashboard?
That's on the rates dashboard, yeah. Is that what the plant and lines and everything are?
That is just that is an annual depreciation fee.
Okay.
Because that's what that is. Because when you look at our audit, and of course, Rick and I, we share.
I was looking at the wrong number anyway. It's current assets 5.381 million. I'm sorry. Is that more along the lines of what your book value is on everything?
Well, if you took both systems, if you look at the audit, which that's an arbitrary number. I mean, the value of a wastewater system, a water system, is what? Are you willing to sell it? And number two, what will it bring?
Who's gonna buy it?
Yeah, who's going to buy it?
Would you be willing to sell it? Do you want to sell it?
Well, I don't want to get fired tonight.
I'm just listening to you guys talk about how bad of an investment it is.
Well,
would you be willing to sell it?
Y'all want to buy it?
At the end of the day, I don't know if you want to. It's kind of like a timeshare.
A lease.
At least. We have capacity, and the way that the county brokered favorable rates with Hickory is they bought capacity on the front end.
Right.
They made payments.
Right. That's exactly right.
So, you know, we know what the county's budget is, we know what the enterprise is, they know what our budget is, they know what size we are. The county is 10 times bigger than the town in budget size. But, you know, I don't want to get fired tonight, but if I had a wastewater plant that was permitted for $1 million to a day, and I was doing less than $400,000 a day, and somebody said, hey, we'd kind of like to buy into that. What's the going rate for capacity in 2019? Now, I would recommend that to the board. I would say, you know, that'd be a great way to whittle away at our enterprise fund debt. Set money aside for infrastructure, whether it's in the town or the county. And then there wouldn't be a contention about outside rates because you'd be a partner. The entity would be a partner.
Right.
That's what we did with Energy 9. We bought our. We bought our letters too.
Don't they stick in what
Go
they're
out
new?
for bid,
Yeah.
and there'd be
Yeah,
a
that's
big
what
bidding.
Yeah. But, yeah.
Well, and, you know, that's what we're looking at here is partnership. So we want to do what's best, you know, not what's best for you guys or just what's best for us, but what's best for both and what is fair and equitable for both sides to get the best outcome for both the town and the county. So, and it's not us.
Right.
It's not the people sitting here.
Right.
It's, you know, the people we represent.
That's right.
So,
All right, we got our marching orders, so
Yeah,
we got more business.
I agree with that.
Gentlemen.
We could sit here all night
Yeah.
and never come on.
Thank y'all.
I want to come do what George was talking about there. That would be good.
That's cool.
Well, like I said, been on the town council for 12 years. This is the first time that we've ever.
I do, exactly.
Ever got together. Good meeting. It was. Next time we'll call this pizza.
Okay.
we'll bring the crackers.
Oh,
Okay.
that's a huge misinformation. There is no way. What it is.
Jeff, you'll call me in the morning. Okay?
Let's close this. It takes long, and I don't think it will. Is that 7 or 8? 8, okay. I gotta get glasses, real glasses. Crap.
Thank you.
That's why I started my question. How could it do?
If you give them stuff, they got stuff.
All right, at this time, Mr. French, other business.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple things to mention. One, our Veteran Service Officer, Ginger Annis, is retiring at the end of September. We started the process of advertising and going to start interviews pretty soon. We have a meeting on the Hometown Strong program on August 26th. I believe they're also meeting with the town later in that afternoon. We have given you information on sales tax for the end of the year. We received $4,875,000, which is 103.77% of what we budgeted, which was $4.698 million, and that was 7.6% of the same time last year. On the new sales tax, we collected $1,522,965. Our budget was $1,521,750, pretty close, but we were ahead, and that is 5.2% ahead. And mentioned tonight, the Consolidated Human Services Advisory Board is meeting or has met, and on September the 9th, we'll meet not only as commissioners, but also as the Consolidated Human Services Board. And, Mr. Chairman, other than that, I have some things for closed session, unless anybody has any questions.
Anyone have any questions? All right, at this time, you have had opportunity to look over your consent agenda, and I'll hear a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Motion to approve.
And we have a motion, we have a second, we have any discussion? All in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion passes unanimously. At this time, we will enter into closed session per North Carolina General Statute 143318.11A, 3, 4, 5, and 6, attorney-client privilege, economic development, contractual, and personal. Do we hear of a motion to enter into to adjourn? And then enter into closed session. Do a motion to adjourn the meeting now, or to close the meeting now. What am I doing?
We know what you're doing. The minutes will say that. I think it's okay.
We're good.
Motion to enter into closed session, that's what I'm saying.
I make a motion to enter into closed session.
Second.
All in favor? Any discussion? Nope. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you for being with us.